Peter, we ready? Yeah, we're ready. Fantastic. Oh man, that's one.
You need a clap?
I thought you already got that, Pete. Should I wait till your headphones are on to clap for you, Peter? William, thanks for having us out.
Yeah, thanks for being here. It's exciting.
This is a beautiful space. Somebody asked a question real quick because I was looking at this, I was looking at the walls. So who picked out your color scheme in here?
So we worked with a design firm out of Atlanta called Square Feet Studios.
Okay.
I'm on the advisory board for the Atlanta Wine and Food Festival and get to go over to Atlanta quite a bit, and just had gone to a number of restaurants there, and just it's a vibe that I felt like Charlotte didn't have yet. Mm-hmm. And the building we're in is very modern, but that's not, I'm not like the Sprockets, like super contemporary,
right.
Kind of guy. But I thought we need to blend into the building. Mm-hmm. So let's take a kind of a mid-century farmhouse approach, and Square Feet, I think they hit it out of the park.
It looks good. And obviously having your Asheville roots, this seems like a subtle nod to it.
Yeah, well, that's, I think a nod to that and a nod to just farming in North Carolina in general. Mm-hmm. But we want to do that, but also realizing that we're in the heart of the biggest city in North Carolina, and to make sure that we can be, a little contemporary too, because you got to know your clientele.
Right.
All right, this is solo pasta, please, for table 13. Thank you.
How has your foray into Charlotte been so far?
When I came down here and decided to open, I was a little trepidatious. Coming to a big city, I wasn't sure if it was going to be super competitive and cutthroat. And literally, as soon as I made the announcement, people like Joe Kindred, Paul Verica, Chris Coleman, Matthew Krenz, they all reached out and they said, "We're really excited for you to be here. What can we do to help out?" And that was this kind of instant, like, okay, this is going to be all right.
It's interesting. I don't know how Asheville is in New York. I found that the chefs were really supportive of each other behind the scenes, competitive, but if you needed to borrow shallots in the middle of shit, you could get it, no problem. I love that Charlotte, as we've grown the time that I've been here, that you see the sharing of resources in that way. I'm always glad to hear that your experience was like that, because when you're sort of in it, you like to think that's what you're doing as a community, but when you hear somebody come in from the outside and it's actually like that, you're like, all right, we're there.
Oh, it's good, man. It's it's like being a good neighbor. Hey, can I borrow a cup of sugar?
Mm-hmm.
That's a little southern hospitality. Mm-hmm. And so I was pleasantly excited about that when we decided to open.
We're gonna go pork shoulder 1, duck 2, and fingerling for the table. Sells 21.
Why did you decide to open up in Charlotte? You could have opened, anywhere. You could have gone to Knoxville, Nashville.
And we looked at all those demographics. My wife had lived here for a long time. She was a management consultant. We have family over this way, and it just seemed like the right time. My business partner for here at Haymaker, he and I grew up together in West Virginia. He's a developer here in town, and he kind of kept prodding me and saying, "Hey, let's open in Charlotte." And I started looking at it, and I about 5 years ago actually started to look at the Park Road Shopping Plaza. Mm-hmm. Fortuitously, my wife got pregnant at the time, and we said, well, maybe not a good time to open a restaurant. And so we put it on pause. 2 kids later, kind of got the itch again. You're
Mm-hmm.
a parent. It's like, once you get a couple years under your belt, you're like, oh, that was easy. We could do it again.
Wait.
That's why I'm wearing this hat, right? Hiding the gray hairs. That was, Charlotte reminded me of Asheville 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm. Oh, in what way?
There was this community of chefs that were supporting local and sourcing from local farms, but also pushing the envelope. And there was this, borrow a cup of sugar type thing, right, that, how can we make the community better? And we all ate at each other's restaurants, and you'd go in and you'd see, a dish that another chef across town was making. You're like, God damn, bastard, like, I should be making that dish. Mm-hmm. And so as a chef, you're pushing yourself to say, okay, what can I do to step my game up? And I think there was just this kinetic energy going on, mm-hmm, of pushing each other, but doing it with a sense of community. And as I started doing my due diligence here and looking at Charlotte, you could feel the same thing. And there's been a lot of folks here building the food community for a long time, and I just felt like it's the right time. And started to get to know people, get to know farmers, go to the Matthews Farmers Market, mm-hmm, meet the people I want to buy from, and it felt right.
we're talking about doing a beef tartare, just very classic, but make like a, get Charlotte to make some nice, like a nice Pullman loaf, cut it into rectangle, smear it down with mayonnaise, and then make a grilled cheese in the brick oven.
Talk to me a little bit about your creative process, because when you're laying your stuff out, like as far as like putting a dish together, like how do you compose that?
As a young chef, I had the opportunity to get my first exec chef job at 26, which was probably too young.
Hey man, I'm kind of in that same boat, which is like, if I could go back on it, I would have said no.
Yeah, exactly. But at the same time, it was a great opportunity, and on someone else's dime to be able to figure it out and start to create my own palette. But I was gifted the book called Culinary Artistry by Page and Dornenberg.
Yeah.
And for me as a chef, it kind of opened up for me more of kind of how to think about food. I was thinking about it that way from my education and from experience in restaurants, but that kind of broke it down a little more fundamentally for me. And in the book it has breaks down each season. Each season it shows what ingredients are in season. And then has highlighted ingredients, bolded ingredients in there that are like kind of the peak ingredients of the season. And then you flip further through the book and you can go specifically to that ingredient, right? And then it'll say like strawberries. And then underneath strawberries, it will list ingredients that pair with it. And so as a chef trying to figure their palate out and really learn how to be a chef, under fire, it was an opportunity to do that and know what works well together.
All right, folks, can we get hands at 21, please? We're gonna go pork belly, soup, mac and cheese, 21.
When I think as a chef, once you begin to figure out your palate, you start to figure out formulas and what works within your style. And also as a chef, you try to push the envelope too and get out of your style because you don't want to be stagnant. But for me, that was really kind of the introductory way of how I learned how to put things together. And I was always had a passion to work with local farms and to work with what's in season. But that I think took that mentality and took that experience and helped kind of put some structure to it.
Right. Where does your passion for local ingredients come from? Is it something you were born? Did you grow up on a farm?
Hanging on to my grandmother's apron strings.
Did we all?
My dad talks garbage about it all the time. I get interviewed and people tell me, "What's your inspiration?" Oh, my grandmother's farm. Hanging out in the kitchen.
Did she really have a farm?
She did. Yeah.
Okay.
My dad is born and raised in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and my mother was born in rural West Virginia and raised there. And so my grandfather was a coal miner and a farmer, and my grandmother was farmer housewife.
Oh, wow.
And so they lived off the land and was very Appalachian. The Appalachian story of you eat what you grow and you put things up for the year. And so as a kid, I remember playing hide and go seek with my sisters and going into their root cellar and just seeing these shelves lined with with canned goods and thinking, oh, who eats that dusty shit? Like just gnarly, right? Fast forward, it's like they had a pantry lined with gold.
Yeah.
That literally they've got summertime and sunshine in a can. And so for me, that was just this foundation to see how you live off the land. My grandfather foraged for mushrooms and ginseng and ramps. I thought he was just, kind of a crazy redneck, and I'd go for walks in the woods with him. Fast forward, I'm really geek out and all that stuff too.
Did you eat it when you were younger? Would you eat the stuff that you would forage?
Yeah, I would eat all that stuff.
And did you do it because you enjoyed it, or did you do it because you were forced to?
I do it because I was forced to. As a kid, I don't know if I ever told anybody this, especially on camera, but my parents would order pizza, and I wouldn't eat it because I didn't like the tomato sauce. So they'd be like, I want cheese sticks.
You didn't like tomato sauce, period? Or?
Period. I had very, didn't like much. It was very meat and potatoes. And I think as I got into college and, expanded my mind, started to take on more food and get more interested in it.
What if we do that and then have the pimento on there? I mean, that keeps the cost where we need to be. Yeah.
I like to have a really nice cheese on there to balance it out.
That shit is funky.
Was culinary always was that always your goal?
No, actually, I got a scholarship to Xavier University in Cincinnati right out of high school on a biology scholarship.
Really?
And so I had grandeur plans to become a radiologist and get a Volvo and house and white picket fence and 2.5 kids and all that stuff and live happily ever after. And I moved to Cincinnati, and it was during the race riots, and so it was a really rough neighborhood we were in. Now that area is very it's kind of a refined neighborhood, but at the time it was watch your back because you might get jumped. For me, it was an opportunity that I got to college, I kind of knew what I wanted to do, but not really. And I was learning a lot more about life and having fun than maybe hitting the books.
Right.
But I did know, hey, I need that piece of paper. I need to keep moving forward in life. So I left Xavier and moved back to West Virginia and got my undergrad degree at West Virginia University.
In biology?
No, I changed majors kind of the way like you change clothes.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's like trying to figure it out. I was business for a while, and then I changed to English and French. And so I got a degree in English and French.
Nice. And that's how we end up here.
Yeah.
This is where a liberal arts degree. This is the joke from earlier, right?
Yeah, man. And the thing about it is I'd always been cooking. My first job, I was washing dishes at a country club in Charleston, West Virginia. And probably like most people in restaurants, one day, the prep cook or line cook called out and they're like, hey man, you know how to make sandwiches? I was like, yeah, I can make sandwiches.
Right.
Next thing you know, it's like you kind of get the bug, right? The energy and the rush and the tickets come in, you get in the weeds and, using your mind and body.
I would go ahead and just have your sauce reduced, so that way you can just dump.
Sauce on the side,
Quick pickup.
Where did your passion for food activism come from? I mean, like you were in Alaska, I saw, which is awesome. I got married in Alaska, so that was like, it's beautiful up there.
Yeah.
I was like, and where does that come from? Not because you grew up on a farm, because I know it's like, when did you intellectualize that it would correlate with what you're doing, like as a chef?
For me, the local food thing, right? It's being part of the community, and I realized as I really started to get into it in my first business that being engaged in the community, it's good for business, but it's also good for the community, and that's good for everyone. And living in Asheville for the past 10 years, I've definitely drank the Kool-Aid.
Right.
And it's like we can buy good ingredients from good people who are supplying us with our raw ingredients to cook with. And we can cultivate our team of people and create a company culture and a kitchen culture and get excited about food and talk food. And we can train our servers to be understanding of that and know the big picture of like who the farmers are, where they're from, and then be able to educate the customer. How's the customer gonna have a bad experience?
Right.
I mean, like you kind of solve the matrix. And yeah, it's a little kind of hippity-dippity, but like I wish more people did that.
Yeah, I agree. And the thing is, most chefs, right? Like, not every chef is going off to Alaska to, highlight fishing practices and talk and have that conversation in a way that like is visually impactful, number one, and also to go out and learn as well. You still consider yourself a student?
Oh, I think any profession, if you want to be great at what you do too, you're always learning, you're always teaching. But yeah, for me, I was fortunate early in my career. I got an accolade as one of the top green chefs in the country, and I'm thinking, green chef, like I'm just doing what my grandma did,
right?
And trying to do it right and make great food. Then later that year, the Monterey Bay Aquarium Seafood Watch said, "Hey, we want to make you a Seafood Watch ambassador for your use of sustainable seafood." I'm kind of mind blown. I'm like, I'm in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. Like, yeah, I'm using great seafood because I want to have putting great ingredients on the plate. Fast forward, I was kind of like every chef. My wife called me an event whore for a while, and it's like because someone said, "Hey, you want to do this event?" Yes, and so I did everything. And one day I got a call from James Beard Foundation. They said, "Hey, we started this Chef Action Network, which is now their impact program, and we've started this thing called the Chef's Boot Camp." And so I did the second one up in New York.
And what does this boot camp do? Like, what do you do with it?
So it's kind of advocacy training for chefs.
Okay. And
so they brought in a bunch of chefs, and we all kind of sat down, and they brought in some folks that would kind of teach us about using your voice as a chef. And it's something I had been doing, right? I think all chefs do, because when you have a successful, popular restaurant and in a community, you, in some regards, become a leader in the community. And they said, you have the opportunity now, especially with social media, to use your voice and to use it for good. And I thought, wow, I just cooked the food, like was kind of my mentality. But when we did this boot camp, I thought, man, like there's some truth behind that. And they also said, as a chef, you're giving out gift cards, like blackjack, right?
Right.
Left and right. And they said, what if you took a moment and instead of doing everything for everyone, you said, what are the things you're passionate about, and hone it into like 4 or 5 groups, and just give your time and money and efforts to them. And for me, the light bulb kind of went off. I thought, man, like make some change.
Yeah.
And so started doing that, and just more things kind of surmounted. And later on in my career, I got asked to do diplomatic work for the U.S. State Department. They have a program that's kind of on pause now due to the current administration. Won't get too political today, but it's on pause right now, and it's called the American Chef Corps. There's about 75 chefs around the country that were enlisted to do international diplomacy work.
Wow. Do you get diplomatic plates for your car?
No, not yet. Damn. Although I will say the couple trips I did when I went through customs, it was just like, Mr. Dissen, come on through. I'm like, what's going on here?
Really?
Went to New Zealand, so they're a biosphere nation, right? Like because it's literally an island out by itself, and they're really crazy about bringing in food from the outside. And I was in line going through customs, and literally like the 10 people in front of me, they're like, get out of here. Like pulling them off to the side, searching their bags, pulling stuff out, and reprimanding them. I came through and I had like all these like vacuum sealed grits and like canned ramps and all kinds of stuff. And they're like, oh, Mr. Dissen, right this way.
Because you had a diplomatic stamp on your passport? Or?
I suppose. I don't know. It was really one of the most bizarre instances I've had
I
traveling.
mean, do you get ID that says that you're working in a diplomatic fashion?
No, I mean, it's not like an ambassador status or anything like that, but I think,
You don't get a badge or a handshake? That'd be cool.
it would be cool. But I mean, it's the U.S. government. I'm sure there was some sort of check mark beside my name, at least for the trips I've taken.
We're going to do a steak to position 2, chicken position 1, and do you want to take the onion tart position 1 also? And can you please follow with the mac and cheese? And then these go on the side for the chicken to position 1 on 43.
What excites you right now about 5 years down the road? Like, I know you can't guess, but the way that you see things going, what's exciting?
2018 was so intense that 2019, I want to take some time just for reflection and planning, and try to figure out how can I make the places I have better and make a better working environment and get things set up, get systems in place so that when I do want to open more, that no one's chasing their tail and everyone knows what's expected. I think that's the one of the biggest things I've learned in opening other restaurants is communication is key. And I'm guilty of not doing it as well or as enough as I should, but trying to set up systems and audits, actually having meetings. The company stuff that as a chef you're like, F that, I don't want to do this.
Right.
But those are things that make good businesses.
Do you hold meetings on a regular basis?
We have weekly kitchen meeting and weekly manager meetings. And I think it's one of those things that, when you're in the weeds in the kitchen, you're like, I don't have time for a 45-minute meeting. But that 45-minute meeting helps to just let you know what's going on, disseminates information. And then that way, as a chef or a sous chef or a lead line cook, like when somebody asks a question, you have an answer. Yeah. Rather than going, I don't know. That's one of my biggest pet peeves too, is I don't know. Right.
You should know.
You should know. Right. And at the end of the day, as a restaurateur and the chef, like if someone says, I don't know, that's my fault.
For the soup bowls, especially this time of year when it's colder, I try to blast it in the salamander just for a second, just to get it nice and toasty.
Do you go out to eat often?
Depends.
I don't mean when you're like out of town or at work, like when you're sort of forced to, right? But as far as like if your wife's like, I don't feel like cooking tonight, or like blah blah blah. People will ask me like, oh, have you been here and you have been there? And it's like, wow, I just feel like I don't go out nearly as much as I used to eat.
I've tried to, being new to Charlotte, I've tried to get out and patronize other people's restaurants. I want to get to know the chefs. I want to go to know their food, and again, create that respect and community. I've definitely eaten out at a lot of places in town here. There's a lot more I'd like to be too. I'm gonna have a home. Definitely, two very busy full-time working parents. We actually cook quite a bit at home. My wife, I think I mentioned, is Indian. She's Gujarati and she's Hindu vegetarian. Go figure, married to an Irish Catholic butcher. Yin and yang, right?
That's how the best relationships work, though, right?
It is.
You got to be completely opposite.
It is, but we cook a lot at home. We eat a lot of Indian food at home, which is not a bad thing.
Oh, that doesn't sound horrible.
But again, I say with a grain of salt because I can't eat Indian food 7 days a week either. So we go out, definitely order pizza, tacos. Asheville. One thing about the city is there's so many damn taco restaurants now. It's kind of like okay, coffee shops, taquerias, and hole in the wall bars.
How long do you think you got with the light in the spot before you're surrounded by more towers? Speaking of change in Charlotte.
I mean, I know there's one going up across behind home plate, the baseball stadium.
Well, I guess I can't really do much over here because of the park.
That was also the beauty of opening here is that we're gonna have an unobstructed view. That park's not going anywhere.
Right.
And that was actually an exciting thing for me. Is part of the reason we decided on the space here at Haymaker is how many cities, even in the country, are you gonna have a space like this with tall windows right on a green space in an urban setting? Pretty hard to find.
You're within spitting distance of a really nice baseball park too.
For sure. It's great. Every Friday for home game, we get a free fireworks show too. So it's a great location. I'm excited to see what's going to happen in Uptown in the next 3 to 5 years.
Would you do another spot in Charlotte?
Yeah. Like I said, fried chicken. You're going to be like Chick-fil-A.
Most successful franchises start off with that. And I think every chef that I've spoken to all want something similar to that. And it's always because it's the simplest, right?
It was a joke. The folks at the zoo approached me and said they wanted to open a marketplace cafe. And I'm like, I don't know if that'll work. So what about fried chicken with a purpose? And they said, great, what do you want to call it? Literally laughing, I said, I don't know, Billy D's Fried Chicken. And they're like, brilliant, we love it. And I'm like...
And so here's the question. When you responded back, was that like an automated response? Like you hadn't thought about it and came back to them and said, how about if we do this instead?
Oh, I thought about the marketplace cafe, but then the chef and the food cost guy and the food waste guy, those guys started speaking in the back of the head and they said, what happens when it rains and nobody goes to the zoo? Like you're just going to throw product away. Food loss is food cost, and that's just not good business. And it's also not sustainable business. So I started just thinking about who comes to the zoo, what do they eat?
Right. So do you have the same dream that most chefs do, which is to get a couple of like good locations operating that are turning good numbers, so that way you can open up that little 30-seater and just cook what you want?
I mean, that would be a dream. It's a scary dream though, because that 30-seat restaurant, it takes a lot, and to fill it up every night and to hit all your numbers, that's tough.
But that business, I think that dream restaurant is not about numbers. It seems like I've tried to do the math on it. Like anybody who's in this industry, if you start thinking about numbers, you're like, oh, how do you pull it off? And I think that's one of those ones that is like, if you get to the point where you're so wealthy that you don't have to think about it, then you get to operate that restaurant.
That's true. And I mean, it would be spectacular to be able to do just no menu every night. People come in and just do the tasting menu because you're you and the restaurant has that stature. I hope Charlotte gets to that point because I would love to open that restaurant.
I think most of us would.
But it's getting the community to embrace that.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I think on that note, I think we've covered it all.
Awesome.
I appreciate your time today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure,
so
man. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I posted something of a picture of a talk I gave like in 2009, and I had on like a 1970s blazer and my hair was long. I had a big ass mustache. You just made a comment, so
I hope it wasn't offensive.
No, it was fun. It was hilarious. So I was like,
I vaguely remember the picture. I was like, holy.
I'm gonna grow the stash out for the Order Fire filming.
What'd your wife say about it?
She was like, "You look dirty as."
Just for that'll be the outtake. It'll be like. Wah, wah.